How do you turn the AC? Because if the readers are supposed to do that, they can turn one of their
Start with a few announcements. Please note on the back of your order of service the announcements. I'd like to call your attention to a few that are quite important.
I can hear you perfectly.
We didn't want to move that. The Tomball Gallery presents the works of John Northcutt. This is the last chance to own a Northcutt sculpture, pottery, or other item. The show opens Saturday, 6/18, Sunday, today, 6/18, and will be open for 2 weeks during gallery hours. A great idea for a Father's Day gift. This is one of John's works over here, and this is a sculpture of his father here. On June 17th, well, that's gone, never mind. The RE program needs volunteers this summer. They're looking for individuals who would like to teach, read a story, or interact with kids. The program is also in need of volunteers to help with crafts and nursery. If you have one Sunday to volunteer this summer, please contact Kelly Ingram, our Director of Religious Education. UUCLC has a t-shirt design contest. We've done this in the past. It's a lot of fun. It's time for new t-shirts for our church. If you would like to submit a design for this, the deadline is coming up. It's June 30th. Designs should be no larger than 8 by 12 on the back and no larger than 6 by 6 on the front. The front and back should mention UUCLC and something we stand for. No more than 4 colors are preferred, unless a rainbow is represented, in which case 6 colors will be allowed. Submit your designs to Sarah Thomas by June 30th. In July, a final design will be selected by a team of judges. Another announcement I have is that your order of service is actually missing the homily. That will take place after the anthem, When Israel Was in Egypt's Land. I don't have pens to hand out. You'll just have to remember. And finally, I think Charlie's done this. We have a pair of prescription glasses in expensive frames. Okay? Doesn't ring a bell with anybody? Okay. All right. Please stand as you are willing and able for the gathering song, number 347, Gather the Spirit. Kathy Cox will lead.
Excuse me, I'm going to use this.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion, and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion, and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun, winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of light resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion, and strength, gather to celebrate once again.
Good morning, everybody. Whether you're here in the sanctuary or joining us on streaming media, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Las Cruces. I'm going to lose my voice at some point. It's allergies. Haney Pearson is our service leader this morning, and I'm Lyn Pearson, his service associate. Kelly Ingram is our director of religious education. Catherine Massey, who's on vacation, is our director of music. Kathy Cox, Mark Conrack, Irene Schultz, and Haney Pearson will provide the music and lead the hymns this morning. Our greeters today are Jean Gilbert, Judy Licht, and Robert Severance. Managing our technology are Elwin Nunn on camera, Mike Yazko, and Claire Neal Wallace handling video, streaming, and audio. The Multicultural Awareness Group is offering hospitality after the service. All of us are glad you're here today. Unitarian Universalism has no creed or dogma. We are a covenant-based church, meaning that we agree to live in relationship with each other according to Unitarian Universalist principles and our covenant of right relations. We embrace diversity in all its forms. Everyone is welcome here. You can learn more about our church at our website, uuchurchlc.org. If you're visiting today, we'd like to meet you. If you are joining us on our streaming service, drop a note in the comments, tell us your name and where you're from, or just say hi. But if you're in the sanctuary, please rise in body or spirit, and I will bring the mic to you so that everybody can hear where you're from. Any visitors in the sanctuary? No? Okay. We're pleased that you have all joined us today. After the service, everyone is welcome for coffee, cookies, and just sit down and talk in the breezeway outside the religious education building. Oh, in the oh, that's a change. That warranted a special announcement.
Good morning, church. In 1863, during the American Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared more than 3 million slaves living in the Confederate States to be free. More than 2 years would pass, however, before the news reached African Americans living in Texas. It was not until Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, on June 19, 1865, that the state's residents finally learned that slavery had been abolished. The former slaves immediately began to celebrate with prayer, feasting, song, and dance. The following year, on June 19th, the first official Juneteenth celebrations took place in Texas.
This is the chalice lighting. We light our chalice for fathers and for fatherhood by Reverend Peter Friedrichs. We light our chalice for sleepless nights awaiting the curfew breakers, for anxious hours as a driving instructor, for hours spent on the sidelines cheering and watching school plays, sometimes resting our eyes, for the pressures of breadwinning and wait till your father gets home, for teaching moments and mentoring moments, for making up answers when you don't know but are expected to because you know everything, for scraps and boo-boo kisses and Band-Aids, for hugs and kisses and silliness and play, for bedtime stories and early morning ice time, for all the aftershave and ties received as gifts, for handing over the car keys and waves goodbye, for father-daughter wedding dances and cradling grandchildren for the first time, for all the moments and all the meaning in the role of a lifetime. We light our chalice for fathers and for fatherhood. Please rise as you are able for the affirmation of covenant and our doxology in English and Spanish. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another.
Below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land, by every tongue. De todos bajo el gran sol surja esperanza, fe, amor, verdad, belleza, la canción de cada tierra, cada voz.
It is time for all ages.
Good morning, church. Oh, thank you, Jen. Thank you. Thank you all. Happy Father's Day. Today I am reading Juneteenth for Maisie. Oh, sorry, Haney. Maisie wants to play outside, but it's too late. It's getting dark, Maisie. It's time to stay inside. Maisie wants a cookie, but it's time for bed. Not now, little one. It's too close to bedtime. Maisie wants to stay up late, but she is too little. Bedtime is the rule, sweet girl. Why so grumpy, Sugar Bear? Asked Dad. I can't go where I want, have what I want, or do what I want, answers Maisie. Well, tomorrow you can have a celebration, says Dad. What are we celebrating? Asks Maisie. We will celebrate the day your great-great-great-grandpa Mose crossed into liberty. The day will be celebrated by us and many more families on a day we call Juneteenth. Dad lifts Maisie into his arms. I bet you're tired of hearing no all the time. Well, great-great-great-grandpa Mose heard no even more. Grandpa Mose worked in the fields that stretched all the way to sunset. He and the other enslaved people would be bone tired, but they had to keep going. Their enslavers wouldn't let them quit, but as they worked, they thought about freedom. And before they finally went to sleep at night, they prayed about freedom and made plans for change and a better future. Some slaves ran north to freedom, following a bright star in the sky. They sweat, they bled, and they cried, till those cries were quieted by a single proclamation from a brave president. Grandpa Mose heard the proclamation read from the balcony of the hotel on a warm June day in Galveston, Texas. Grandpa Mose heard nothing but cheers, saw nothing but happiness, and felt nothing but pride shared by all of those around him. The cheers became dancing. The dancing became celebrating. It went on and on into the night. Grandpa Mose and the others had found freedom. They continued to work, but this time they were paid for their hard work. So they worked, and they saved, and they never forgot the moment they heard, the moment that changed their lives forever. But things weren't perfect. Black people still struggled to stand shoulder to shoulder with white people. They still weren't treated as equals. It wasn't easy, but they never gave up. And every year on Juneteenth, they remembered. They marched for jobs. They lobbied for schools and the right to vote. They shouted for opportunity. And every year on Juneteenth, they celebrated and remembered. They learned and they grew. They forgave. They excelled and achieved. They became heroes. Now, sweet Maisie, it's your turn to celebrate, just like great-great-great-grandpa Mose. It's your turn, Maisie, to eat some barbecue and drink some strawberry pop. It's your turn to celebrate and to remember. Thank you.
Well, we're going to sing a little more. Please rise as you are able for hymn 1030, Siyahamba. Kathy Cox will lead. It'll be sung first in Swahili. Do y'all remember an old song called Shake a Hand? And the second verse went like this: your troubles I'll share. Let me know and I'll be there. I'll stay close to you, any place and anywhere. Shake a hand, shake a hand. Shake a hand if you can. Well, we not only share our troubles here, we share our joys. And in order to stay in community, we share our joys, sorrows, and mixed blessings as part of the way we stay in community. If you have a joy, sorrow, or mixed blessing, raise your hand and please wait for the microphone, which I will hopefully turn on.
We should all be very proud. Our church was listed as a gold sponsor for the NAACP Juneteenth banquet last night because we had 2 tables paid for.
Thank you. Kevin Fitzgerald, his wife, Lena, had surgery on Tuesday, and she sort of had a relapse, and she's in the hospital and, in pain, so keep her in your hearts.
I'll circle around this way.
My grandchild is here with me visiting from the Olympic Peninsula in Washington, and he was too shy before to be introduced, but now that he's gone. We're leaving tomorrow for the UU camp for the week, family camp up at Ghost Ranch, so that should be fun.
Any other joys and sorrows? Haney will light another candle for all the joys and sorrows that you may not wish to share openly.
This morning's meditation is We Imagine a Path by D. Scott Cooper. We bow our heads in order to imagine not one path, but many. We imagine a path forward for those who cannot imagine any path forward because of poor health, financial hardships, family crises, and other roadblocks we cannot begin to understand nor imagine. We struggle to imagine a path forward for those who are forced to leave a homeland against their will, and for those unable to leave a war-torn homeland despite their lives being in danger. We imagine a path forward for those who leave their homes to make a better life for their families elsewhere. May we be a welcoming presence along that path toward hope. We come together to imagine a path forward for those of us despairing because we do not seem to know our country nor our neighbors, despite the fact that we have not moved at all. May we be the good we are hoping to find as we travel side by side down the path toward hope. We imagine a path forward for those who feel lonely at this time of year. This is Father's Day. May we take one another's hands as we walk that path toward community. Truly, we know as we imagine these ways forward and take one another's hands, the paths will lead to hope. The roads will lead to beloved community, and the arc will bend toward justice because we have dared to travel with love in our hearts. We now join together in a time of silence.
I'm going to read you the Emancipation Proclamation. It is a government document. It has some interesting language. I tend to think of it as a bit tricky. January 1st, 1863, by the President of the United States of America, a proclamation. Whereas on the 22nd day of September in the year of our Lord, 1862, a proclamation was issued by the President of the United States containing, among other things, the following, to wit, that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then thenceforward and forever free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no act or acts to repress such person or any of them in any efforts they may make for their actual freedom. That the executive will, on the first day of January aforesaid by proclamation, designate the states and parts of states, if any, in which the people thereof respectively shall then be in rebellion against the United States, and the fact that any state or the people thereof shall on that day be in good faith represented in the Congress of the United States by members chosen thereto at elections wherein a majority of the qualified voters of such state shall have participated, shall in the absence of strong countervailing testimony, be deemed conclusive evidence that such state and the people thereof are not then in rebellion against the United States. Now therefore I, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, by virtue of the power vested in me as Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States, in time of actual armed rebellion against the authority and government of the United States, and as a fit and necessary war measure for suppressing said rebellion, do on this first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863, and in accordance with my purpose, so to do publicly proclaim for the full period of 100 days from the day first above mentioned, order and designate as the states and parts of states wherein the people thereof respectively are this day in rebellion against the United States, the following, to wit: Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, except the parishes of St. Bernard, Plaquemines, Jefferson, St. John, St. Charles, St. James Assumption, Terrebonne, Lafourche, St. Mary, St. Martin, and Orleans, including the city of New Orleans. Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia, except the 48 counties designated as West Virginia, and also the counties of Berkeley, Accomack, Northampton, Elizabeth City, York, Princess Anne, and Norfolk, including the cities of Norfolk and Portsmouth, and which accepted parts are for the present left precisely as if this proclamation were not issued. And by virtue of the power and for the purpose aforesaid, I do order and declare that all persons held as slaves within said designated states and parts of states, and henceforward shall be free, and that the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authorities thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of said persons. And I hereby enjoin upon the people so declared to be free to abstain from all violence unless in necessary self-defense. And I recommend to them that in all cases when allowed, they labor faithfully for reasonable wages. And I further declare and make known that such persons of suitable condition will be received into the armed service of the United States to garrison forts, positions, stations, and other places, and to man vessels of all sorts in said service. And upon this act, sincerely believed to be an act of justice, warranted by the Constitution, upon military necessity, I invoke the considerate judgment of mankind and the gracious favor of Almighty God. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed. Done at the city of Washington, this first day of January, in the year of our Lord, 1863, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 87th. By the President, Abraham Lincoln, William H. Stewart, Secretary of State. Our singing friends are going to present an anthem.
When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. Thus saith the Lord, bold Moses said, let my people go. If not, I'll smite your firstborn dead. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. No more shall they in bondage toil. Let my people go. Let them come out with Egypt's spoil. Let my people go. Go down, Moses. Way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go.
Thank you. That wasn't in our hymnal, and they bought into it. On June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger, Commander, District of Texas, read his General Order Number 3. This informed the people of Texas that all slaves were free due to the Emancipation Proclamation. There was some shock, but there was a lot of partying also. Today, Juneteenth is a national holiday here, and celebrations occur in other parts of the world. The website Juneteenth.com has a place for users to list their own celebrations nationally. And you can select a state from a map of the country to find out what's happening in that state. The international page has a list of celebrations around the world. Aside from the observances on the many American military bases, there are observances listed for Barbados, England, France, Germany, Ghana, Guam, Israel, Italy, Japan, Puerto Rico, Taiwan, and Trinidad. Some of these planned celebrations will concentrate on African American history, and some are planning to use this as a time for healing and celebrating the concept and its meaning to different folk. This certainly is heady stuff, especially when you consider that many Americans about my age, including myself, never heard of Juneteenth until we were grown. Some of you never heard about it until you saw what the topic was for today. Some, sure, all of us were aware of the Emancipation Proclamation and the great emancipator, but big celebrations, no. I understand why Black Virginians were a whole lot less jubilant in 1863 than those happy Texans who would hear about freedom 2 years later. There are some odd things about the document. And as a former government employee, I have to believe that this document was wordsmithed until it said exactly what the authors wanted it to say. The great emancipator wrote, quote, "And upon this act sincerely to be an act of justice warranted by the Constitution upon military necessity." Catch that very meaningful phrase? Upon military necessity. He goes on to write, quote, "And I further declare and make known that such persons of suitable condition will be received into the armed service of the United States to garrison forts, positions, stations, and other places, and to man vessels of all sorts in said service." Old Abe was looking for help. Abe needed to offset the number of Black Confederates that were participating in many battles. Yes, that is correct, Black Confederate soldiers. Scott K. Williams, in a paper titled Black Confederates Heritage, estimates that there were more than 65,000 Southern blacks in Confederate ranks. He also asserts that Jefferson Davis had plans for 300,000 black soldiers for the Confederate States' colored troops. We should not think that this is strange because we know that people will fight invading armies, regardless of how they are treated by their fellow citizens or how they are treated by their government. Another disconcerting thing about the document was that it said it did not free anybody, really. Its application was limited to the states and parts of states, if any, in which the people thereof respectively shall then be in rebellion against the United States. Well, in 1787, Congress forbade slavery in the Northwest Territories. Those territories are now known as Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and parts of Minnesota. All of the states above the Mason-Dixon line, Pennsylvania and above, had abolished slavery or set in motion measures to gradually abolish it by 1804, long before the Civil War. In 1862, Congress abolished slavery in the District of Columbia and the rest of the territories. Of the 15 slave states, 11 seceded from the Union, and 4 of the 5 all-important border states, Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri, since we're talking about John Northcutt, he would have said Missouri, were allowed to keep their slaves. The 5th, West Virginia, had separated from Virginia over slavery and became a free state on June 20th, 1863. One of the 11 secessionists, Tennessee, was under Union control by the time of the proclamation. So since the named areas were in open rebellion and cared nothing about what Abraham Lincoln said, no slaves were immediately freed by the proclamation, and would not have been if the Union had lost the war. Even with these oddities, the Emancipation Proclamation has come to be known as the document that freed the slaves and serves as an icon for freedom in other parts of the world. That's not bad. We all know of people and organizations that have risen above bad periods earlier in their existence. Jim Brown just died, and there were many, many columns written about his dual personalities, so I will not go into that. However, Planned Parenthood was established by a woman who wanted to slow down the birth rate among minorities in order to maintain a white majority in America. I have met a number of World War II veterans, including my uncles, who held the American Red Cross in very low regard. Actually, they detested the organization. It seems that in World War II, these veterans had to buy articles from the Red Cross that were donated for servicemen, or had been purchased by the Red Cross with donations for servicemen. I believe that both of these organizations have moved well beyond these low points and are held in high esteem by most Americans. Well, so has the proclamation. No one is going to celebrate its actual effective date because it went into effect January 1st, 1863. Now, looking at the calendar, as January through December, I'm looking at anniversary dates that are not necessarily in chronological order, because most of these dates occurred between 1862 and 1865. January 31st, the date the 13th Amendment officially passed Congress, abolishing the institution of slavery. April 3rd, the day Richmond fell to the Union. April 9th, the day Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. April 16th, the day slavery was abolished in the nation's capital. May 1st, Decoration Day, which, as David Blight movingly recounts in Race and Reunion, the Civil War in American Memory, the former slaves of Charleston, South Carolina, founded by giving the Union war dead a proper burial at the site of the fallen planters' elite race course in 1865. September the 22nd, the day Lincoln issued his preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. December 6th, the day the 13th Amendment was ratified in 1865. Now, all of these are dates, that anniversaries that could be legitimately celebrated across the land. But Juneteenth? Now, of course, there is always July 4th, America's first Independence Day, some 77 years before President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. But we already celebrate that day as Americans. July 19th, June 19th. Haney can't type. June 19th, Juneteenth, on the other hand, is smack dab in the middle of barbecue and picnic season. An ideal time for celebration. For UUs, it's an ideal time to celebrate the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We must be ever vigilant, as the struggle against slavery is a constant fight in the land of the free. Sounds kind of stupid, doesn't it? Now, what if I told you that the judicial system decided the word slavery was not the best word choice and substituted the phrase involuntary servitude? Does it make more sense now? The Europeans who relocated to the Americas in the 15th and 16th centuries found a freedom that they had not previously experienced, and they passed that love for this freedom down to their descendants who fought to keep their freedom. So did the native peoples that the Europeans displaced. So did the African peoples and their descendants. The National Archives established a timeline for the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which actually abolished slavery in the United States and any place subject to its jurisdiction. This timeline begins in 1784, when Thomas Jefferson tried to get the Continental Congress to abolish slavery. No one knows if he were merely trying to protect his family or not, but the issue failed by a single vote. Come on now. No matter what side of the debate you come down on, it is agreed that Sally Hemings was the half-sister of Martha Wales Skelton Jefferson, TJ's wife. Whether TJ or his nephew was the father of Sally's children, they were in fact family. The timeline continues with the proclamation, the 13th Amendment. Oh, by the way, the border state of Delaware ratified that 13th Amendment in 1901. which gave blacks the vote. Okay. Next comes the 14th Amendment, which gave blacks equal rights, the 15th Amendment, which gave blacks the vote, through the black codes and civil rights legislation in the 19th century. During the 20th century, arguments centered around what constituted involuntary servitude. Alabama laws permitting forced labor were unconstitutional. The military draft was constitutional. After ruling that trading a baseball player without his consent is not involuntary servitude in 1972, the court defined involuntary servitude in 1988 and still had to deal with mandatory community service and the income tax. So far in the 21st century, the Annenberg Classroom 13th Amendment timeline lists only a single action. In 2003, President George W. Bush signed a national security directive against human trafficking, calling it a modern-day form of slavery. The executive order called for a crackdown on those who deal in human trafficking, both in the United States and abroad. However, that doesn't mean that the lower courts have not used the 13th. In 2010, William Hatch, along with two others, Paul Beebe and Jesse Sanford, were found guilty and lost their appeal right here in New Mexico in connection with the assault on a 22-year-old developmentally disabled man of Navajo descent by willfully causing bodily injury to the young man because of his actual and perceived race, color, and national origin. Legal involuntary servitude is kaput in this country, but as Reverend Melissa Mummert of the UU Church of Charlotte, North Carolina, said in her sermon, Juneteenth, a celebration of freedom, quote, "We can celebrate that legal slavery ended in the United States, but notice that of the 2 million people incarcerated in this country, approximately 2/3 are people of color. We can celebrate that legal segregation ended in this country, but recognize that de facto residential segregation increasingly keeps us from racial understanding and healing. We can celebrate that an African American man is running for president of the United States, which gives you a time of when this sermon was written. But also notice that nearly half of all African American and Latino children live below the poverty line. We can each personally celebrate all that has been accomplished in our lifetimes to further the work of racial justice and acknowledge that the work that calls to us now. As Ralph Ellison says, there's been a heap of Juneteenths before this one, and I can tell you there'll be a heap more before we're truly free, unquote. Now, I have gone on and on about slavery and involuntary servitude, but for most of us, the entire thing is an intellectual exercise. This discussion is usually a black-white thing and has no relevance in New Mexico. But don't look up here at me and think that I suffered long and hard under the man's oppression. No, as one friend told me, you were born under a silver cloud. So I too am a person of privilege, I guess. Let us all look around us and see where our racial divide exists. This is New Mexico, where my blackness is almost meaningless. What are the steps that we should take in our community? What divides the people of Las Cruces, Doña Ana County, New Mexico? What steps can you take to heal that divide? Do you know how to speak border Spanish? Will you learn? What steps do you need to take in order to learn this language? The church has a number of outreach programs to help members of the community. Are you involved in any? What steps will you take? Reverend Moment closed with words from W.E.B. Du Bois. And while I had issues with Du Bois' lack of regard for Booker T, I like these words. Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done and not some future day or future year. It is today that we fit ourselves for the greater usefulness of tomorrow. Let us remember those who died in slavery and those who died to end it in the United States. But let us leave here determined to fight those who continue to perpetuate involuntary servitude, to fight the efforts of those determined to deny people their rights, and to fight the causes of de facto segregation within our own community.
Sometimes he gets fired up. Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year. It is today that we fit ourselves for the greater usefulness of tomorrow. That segues right into now is the time for us to make our donation to this church so that we continue its work for the greater good in many days to come. Remember that the recipient of this quarter's Change for Change is very fittingly the Border Servant Corps.
Ed joined us kind of late on Friday, so he didn't get in the order of service. Ed Long here. And if you want to sing along on Swing Low, Sweet Chariot anytime, that'd be really nice.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I gotta remember my voice. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. If I get there before you do, coming for to carry me home, I'll cut a hole and pull you through, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. If you get there before I do, coming for to carry me home. Tell all my friends I'm coming too, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
I never remembered my part.
Thanks. Please rise as you are able for our closing hymn, number 95, There Is More Love Somewhere. And Kathy will start you off.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
The Commons is a section of the Atlantic magazine where writers respond to letters to the editor regarding their articles. This month's issue published 3 letters in response to the article, The New Anarchy, by Adrienne LaFrance. The following is a portion of Ms. LaFrance's reply. Thank you to everyone who read my story. I chose the periods of violence I examined not because they offered simple solutions for exiting these dangerous times, if only, but because they carry serious warnings that I believe Americans must heed. It would be too facile to say that perpetrators of violence should be held accountable. Of course, that is the case. But history demonstrates again and again that in periods of political violence, Government overreach poses a great danger. The unconstitutional Palmer raid may have squashed anarchist violence in the 1920s, for instance, but at a cost that is far too steep ever to be repeated. I am deeply worried about what will happen to Americans' civil liberties if political violence continues to worsen. That is why I focused on how right-wing extremists have succeeded in provoking violent reactions from their political foes. This is an extraordinary, dangerous dynamic that fuels propaganda and disinformation, masks who is primarily responsible, exacerbates state violence, and exacerbates decivilizations and democratic backsliding. Finally, Mark Robert Snyder is absolutely right to point out the underlying racism that animates so many right-wing extremists. This is why I mentioned the post-Reconstruction campaign, perversely known as redemption, and called it an urgent warning. Sometimes political violence ends not because it has been defeated, but because it has achieved its aims, unquote.
Please join me in the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Go